We'll check now to see how the audio sounds and whether or not this is totally cooperative. I think it will be. Testing 1, 2, 3. I think it has me at about like 10 to 15 seconds behind. I think this should be fine. Decrease the desktop audio to. Yep, I think everything sounds just about fine. So hello, it's been a while. I'm going to bring up my other screen here. Things mostly work as they should in this fantastic new apartment that I have. That the internet works, which is on its own delightful. More importantly, hey Durian, always nice to see you. Yeah, so everything works here. The audio slapback isn't too bad, and on top of that, I want to say that the internet here is just so much better. It's not going through regular downtime or whatever have you. It's not exploding or failing at any given moment, so I get to enjoy the rest of this place, which is much better. What I want to do tonight was just briefly, I want to see basically how fast I could speed through a few details about my Lancer campaign, go through some design prep, because I have to go through a little bit. I have to probably do a lot in order to be ready for next Thursday, but every time I do campaign prep, I'm adding to a library. Lancer's perfect for this. Every time I do campaign prep, I'm adding to a library that I can draw on future sessions, or at least I do my prep in that way, or I try to. Like, for instance, this last mission that you can actually see on stream here. Originally, this map was intended for the Monday group. I have two separate groups. I have a Monday group, I have a Thursday group, and then I have people who are playing in Bronstein, and I'll go through an explanation of all those in a moment. But I have all three of these, right? And this map was intended originally for the Monday group. I ended up busting it out for the Thursday group because I had another map that was good for like interior ship combat, but it wasn't like complete. This was further along than the other one was, and I said, all right, screw it. I'm not doing another ship interior map when the other group hasn't even seen this one. And they're finding relatively similar classes of vessels. So what's the point of what would be the point exactly in I don't know, delaying the session so I could do another interior map? They're probably just gonna blow up the whole thing anyways. That's kind of style or strategy I take when I'm prepping this stuff. What I used to have when I was running a paid game was I used to have a lot more assets for antlions, the different biological monstrosities, the very not biological monstrosities that the players would be fighting. Sort of digitized computer constructs that players didn't know if they were truly alien or if they were just humans that were decorps. Couldn't figure it out. But that was a major mystery throughout the campaign. All of them would like build up over the course of the campaign for more and more assets that I could deploy at random. And that was fun, but I wanted to, before I did another paid game, I wanted to go through that process with a normal campaign first, and that would make sure that, one, I could build up, well, for one thing, making sure that they got their money's worth, but two, I guess I got the idea that I could turn this into a grand campaign if I got more DMs, and if I had more DMs, I could definitely turn it into a grand campaign, provided we had some kind of standard operating procedure for running missions. Because remember, we have a faction game that's going across this. I have my sector map here. All of these are planets over this way. I actually started, let's see, I had the original sector map that's in the process of being revamped. with different names. So each of these little clock icons here are different maps. The players start over here. Hagar is the IPSN colony world that's next to a nebula, and you can't see the nebula on screen because it hasn't been drawn into the rest of this map. It's being drawn into a different map. But all of these other planets, I think just about all these other planets, are in a nebula where positional, like vector calculations, positional calculations, jumps are inconsistent, and it is suspected but not confirmed that with the density of systems that are within the nebula, that probably ships traveling through it are, for unknown reasons, engaged in FTL travel. They don't know why, they don't have a means of really testing it. Certainly not consistently, but they are aware that they're traveling between different systems that, realistically speaking, could be several light years apart. Even the ones closer together should at least take, a few months to get across. And that's not the, for whatever reason, that's not the case in the nebula. So the players had their first missions. I'll go through the missions here. I've been running this since the beginning of September. I believe that we're just about to start mission 5. And recall, we have 2 groups. Each time one group gains a license level, it increases the license level of the overall parties involved. So right now that's both the Thursday group and the Monday group. We're on mission, what was it? Mission 1 was a mission to rescue a fellow named Captain Greg's Hullet. Yeah, I think it was Captain Greg's Hullet at the behest of Captain Rory Hullet, a container liner ship that the players are running security for. That's how they all met. Standard operating procedures when when you hear a distress call, as opposed to what used to be the standard operating procedure was, hey, if it's a distress call, you got to go. It doesn't matter who it is. You can't ignore that distress call, or else you're going to face sanctions. You're going to face legal penalties. Everybody, it's just standard across the galaxy wide. You hear a distress call, you got to go for it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Because being stranded in space sucks. Naturally, pirates, who are very, very, very numerous in this nebula, that is for some reason already colonized and populated by a number of different factions and diasporan worlds, and overall just independent factions. Pirates are very numerous throughout here. So the shipping company, or the corp that called IPSN that they work for or started working for, has determined, hey, don't wait for backup. Whenever you get a distress call, you can go for it. You are still expected to go for it, but you're expected to hold position and wait for backup. They do this, and but the request for backup, or the distress call, is coming from this guy's brother, and he's like, all right, listen, if we get in trouble, I'll take the fall for it. If we succeed, I will put in a request for you guys to have an increase in license level. And the players are like, let's go for it. Go save my brother. They do so. That's our introduction to the campaign. Second mission was called Iron Flask. So on a decommissioned colony ship, this is where we get into the Bronstein game, or the faction game. A decommissioned colony ship made its way over to it's one of those toroids, or spin colony ships. It generates gravity through centrifugal force. Centrifugal force? I'll check the pronunciation later. Makes it over, and its designation, its IFF tag, changes from whatever the colony ship name was before, not important, to Iron Flask. And it jumps. It goes on a not a near light bolt, a near light ejection from the salvage yard where it was supposed to be salvaged after jettisoning a bunch of black drones that began attacking the station. It jumps into the nebula, made its way right over to this pirate control planet called Cozy. A security team engaged these drones and then started following the ship. They needed to repair and refuel. They did so at a pirate-controlled station and got captured by pirates. Now, the player's job at that point was not to go rescue them. They were to fend off the pirates attacking the salvage yard. And that was a salvage yard over by Hagar. It was this. Once they completed that, they were going to be able to follow up on Cozy, and they did. They followed up on Cozy, then they followed up. They returned the trunk security. They got a ship of their own, and they said, "Hey, let's go after that spin colony ship." They found it. It was being controlled by by like this black goo kind of like nanomachine swarm, or like called black flesh swarm. Might have been sentient. Pretty nasty encounters overall, but they enjoyed themselves, or they were happy to have it over with. They were not able to take control of the Iron Flask back, and but they were able to rescue an HP, basically an AI, off of the station. As the ship, now FTL capable, which is rare in the setting of Lancer, jumped to here. Jumped, I believe, to Hotep. So I should probably put a new token for it. Create like a new deployable here. And in the meantime, the whole point of that really was, oh, there we go, Iron Flask. The whole point of that was this little thing here has now jumped into a different station, and it's controlled by the pirates that the players faced on Cozy. So now the pirates are in control of this temporarily suppressed, sentient, like blackwashed nanite swarm. And along with an FTL capable ship. So these pirates just got significantly buffed, say, in the course of a player mission. There's the Monday Night group, in the meantime, is following see here, they're following a mercenary company called Mirror Smoke into the nebula to recover a unidentified package from a decommissioned, no, not a decommissioned carrier, a recently attacked SSC carrier. And they're not sure what the intelligence packet is. They tried doing some downtime actions and narrative play to figure it out, but they didn't get a line, get a beat on it. Unfortunate, but what can you do? They're following them into the nebula right now, and next mission they're actually going to, what was it? Their job is to make sure that MSMC doesn't die, but also trying to make sure that MSMC doesn't see them. This mercenary company they're not fans of interference, so they're not going to take kindly to people following them, and they might shoot first, ask questions later, and let the lawyers handle it on the back end if they happen to kill anybody innocent. That's kind of the whole deal of this mercenary company. Pirates attack the rear guard. Players attack the pirates, pull them off the rear guard. Rear guard isn't aware of this because they can't see where the pirate ship is. Only the players know where they're moving. And they're going to be able to catch up to MSMC. The main force is not going to be around the carrier. Only the rear guard is going. MSMC, the main force, they're figuring like, all right, this is an easy job. We're going to pick up some side work. Fantastic. Which reminds me, I need to name. Does anybody have a name for an SSC ship? Oh, my battlegroup PDF. I'm pretty sure that there's something for. Oh, I've just been messaged with something. Who knows what? Discord has 100%. They changed the notification like bell thing, and I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like it. Setting and world building tools. I would really like battlegroup name. Naming conventions. Frigates are generally named for. Oh, they do this by faction? They do. Okay, so those are for Union. I don't know if they have something for Crack Trade Baronies. They might not have something for SSC. There we go. Consular Security. Consular Security is the official body responsible for a number of Smith Shimano Corpo's security and intelligence organizations, both on book and off book, organizing them with a single force structure for operations outside of the constellation. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So, what is the carrier name? Skyhooks are bi-function carrier ships. Let's see here. Constellar's naming follows internal SSC biocode terms, combining two nouns into a code phrase. Oh, no. It was CHK. CHK. All right. I think I could do so. I think I could work with that. I could do folder for ships and stations. I'm gonna do a new actor. I'm gonna file it under deployable. We'll do CHK winter contract. That will be the Pyron class carrier. The Pyron class carrier, by the way, if we're looking at this, yeah, there we go. Just scroll all the way up. We might talk a little bit about battlegroup tonight. I'm not gonna. I'm thinking that we're mostly gonna save this for later. But the Pyron, this is so cool. This is the only like mass-produced SSC ship, as far as I know. SSC, yeah, smaller than the Skyhook class carriers utilized by the security forces. The Pyron class strike carrier is a more conventional vessel, but designed with their exacting standard for engineering, aesthetics, and cutting-edge technology in mind. Let's see here, they're commissioned. That's interesting. Utilizes experimental gravitic power plants and singularity motivators to act as a novel fighter tier launch system capable of quickly teleporting strike craft over great distances. A series of strict minimum launch distance failsafes are in place to prevent the risk of catastrophic co-materialization. That's to say, these things teleport their fighters and bombers, and they're very concerned about teleporting their fighters and bombers into the middle of a active reactor system, or otherwise into an enemy ship. That would not be good. It's so cool looking. It's so exotic compared to almost everything. I shouldn't say almost everything. Like all the ships I think look cool. It's just fascinating to me that like this itself just looks alien almost compared to everything else. So the Monday night group is moving on that location soon. I'm not looking to do that. I do want to make sure I still have that one. Yeah, we're going to talk about it for the thread later tonight. No, I didn't click that. Oh, no, I did. Okay, it's just Twitter being done. That's fine. CHK winter contract, we're gonna dump that around this way. Now, in the meantime, my players for mission, I think it was mission 4? Yeah, mission 4. This will be interesting. So the CHK winter contract, this is where MSMC is heading. The main force has already gotten there, but they're moving onward because they're mercenaries and they want to get some extra pay, extra jobs in. They're going to be at one of these 3 planets, I believe. But the funny thing is that mission 4, which the players are currently, well, players the Thursday night group already finished, just finished this last Thursday, has been teleported to this world. I think it would be very, very funny if MSMC showed up on Dagon and started firing down on uh, started firing down on the players and on their enemies as well. They've expressed interest in this before being part of sort of like a three-way fight. This would be really cool to them. Dagon is an interesting world, I think, because if I pull this up here, I use CompCon to manage pretty much all of my Traveler data for these worlds, and I generated all of these worlds using Traveler. If I go to Dagon here, it's very interesting because the technology, nope, that's incorrect. Technology 9. I don't think that's correct. It should be high. I think it's supposed to be a tech level of D. So let me fix that. Yeah, because it didn't save it. Sometimes if I synchronize this, it takes the wrong version over, which is annoying. Just a thin atmosphere doesn't require protection. Hydrographic percentage 30. It's supposed to have a tech level of D, which is pretty high there. Otherwise, a standard world, except for the fact that it only has a population of like 100 people. Really, the actual population is like 10 to the 10 to the second power, 10 squared, times like whatever calculation Traveler does for it, which is probably a d6 or 2d6, but I didn't know that at the time when I was going through this. I thought that 10 squared just meant like it was only going to be 100 people. That's how it was going to be divided up, which is not the case, but still interesting. So I said, all right, why did this have like such a high tech level, but there's only 100 people there? I think I remember looking at the government and thinking this is probably some kind of like technologically advanced world where the people who made the technology have left it behind. The people who are working on it right now are very private, secretive. They probably have a lot of automated security to deal with of their own design and of the planets to deal with any people moving in. So there's some kind of Horizon research base here. Horizon is the kind of default tech terror of the setting, and I really enjoy using them. So I decided that Dagon is going to be that. I decided that they had made an alliance with nearby pirates and added the Beksinski, or given an FTL drive, or modified it, the Beksinski's drive to be FTL in a way that they weren't sure exactly how it worked, but they knew it had something to do with the return protocol. That basically, it wasn't so much teleporting the ship as reversing it in time. There's a mech that works like this in Lancer as well. It's called the Lich. It's awesome. But there's a return protocol attached to this ship that reverses it in time with a few, it's not perfectly reversing it in time. They want to bring people back with them, but there's a few conditions. There's a lot of different preconditions for what counts as reversing the ship. Mostly it's reversing the ship's position and trying to maintain the state of most of its current contents. And maybe returning a few people back to life by reversing them in time. But the players decided, they hacked it, and they decided they want to come along for the ride. So right now they're in the middle of a larger research base. And the other Monday night group is closing on a pretty similar position here, where they're going to be, once they get to the winter contract and make sure that MSMC doesn't, die out there, their contract or their license requirement will be complete. But right now, the players are assaulting by wave teleportation. They're now in the middle of like the space that they should not be in. So that's sort of the catch up for the campaign I'm in right now. There it is. There's my pen. In the meantime, I've also been running a Bronstein. Now, there's not as many. I don't think that there's any patrons up this way. There might be one. There might be one active patron up this way. Now, it's funny that I mentioned that earlier about the technologically advanced worlds. There aren't a lot of tech advanced worlds in this like subsector that I made, but I think that the ones that are highest, almost all of them, almost all of them have very low populations. So it's a similar situation to Dagon over there. But yeah, so the patrons have been on the move. They've been attacking each other. They've mostly been setting up alliances nearby. But the very first thing that happened to a lot of them was I just had pirates nearby start attacking them. Because Braunstein is kind of like it's the RPG equivalent of diplomacy, and diplomacy doesn't work if you don't have people fighting for territory and everybody making friends immediately. So if I have access to NPCs, the very first thing that they're going to do is start either undercutting the fellow patrons, fellow factions, or they're going to start screwing with them in other ways, which is fine, you know. So the first turns, yes, the first turns were about mostly establishing alliances. There were pirates from Gain Fear that immediately attacked Kavad and the mercenary company run by a player that owns a controlling interest in that station above Kavad, so they beat them back. Immediately, two fleets jumped in and attacking an autonomous fleet made mostly of subalterns or an AI or whatever have you, began attacking, I believe, Nedi and Kafad. No, Nedi and Munafai. Neither of which are controlled by players, but are adjacent to player controlled systems, so they're all pretty freaked out about it right now. And they're not huge fleets, it's just the fact that they seem to be overrunning these planets that's worrying them. That's going on with the patrons. I think we had two or three patrons who just started like exploring their local subsectors in like nearby. They immediately, which I was concerned because I figured that one of them would just like, I figured again I was going to run into the get along gang problem of people just kind of going back and forth and they're making new assets and they're not really doing anything of importance. That didn't turn out to be the issue here because they started branching out and saying, okay, now that I've scouted my local area, now that I know what this other planet is made out of, that for instance is balkanized and it's mostly a bunch of pirate factions fighting over scraps left behind by better civilizations, I'm gonna go conquer those guys. I'm gonna go fight those guys immediately. Which is great, because like, alright, all three of those factions now that are fighting over this planet and system are now fighting you. It's not that they're not fighting each other, it's like primarily their damage output is gonna be focused on your fleet that's heading over, your battle group heading over. And destroying it. Which didn't work, of course, because he has a considerably larger faction. I think the guy who runs over by Fornic is a diasporan world that's it's basically based on the Metal Gear Solid 5 Diamond Dogs, which rocks. It's always a problem when you add mercenaries as an option for people inside these games, is that a lot of people immediately want to become mercenaries and don't really want to like pick their contracts. They just want people to offer them payment for other places that they could assault and take over, destroy, and that's fun, but like you need people to, I don't know. Point of these is not to make more work for me, generally speaking, but making other people attack the players, that's not work. That's not more work for me at all. Especially because the Lancer faction rules are just pristine. They're fantastic. Wish I knew about them earlier. They are made for a Braunstein. They don't say it in that word. I don't know if Tom or Miguel have ever heard the word Braunstein before, but they have described in their faction rules, released in the KTB, the Kraken Trade Barony Field Guide, they've described a Braunstein. So that was the turn 3 update, I suppose, which is still currently ongoing. There's still people submitting orders for turn 3, but right now people have set up their initial alliances and they're getting ready to turn inward on each other because raiding each other and seizing assets are more profitable than trying to build up assets, especially when it takes time. And when you're building assets, there's a chance that you just make no progress. You have to fill up a clock, and that clock normally has 2 segments. You can fill up both segments at once if you 6. That's fantastic. You could also roll a 1 and get no progress. And then you have to spend your next turn making it up and hoping that you get a 6 to make up the turn, or maybe roll another 1. Not so great. Seizing an asset, on the other hand, all you have to do is beat the other faction's die roll, and you succeed. So I think it's, yeah, I think that's considerably more fun, and it excites me to see people start to roll to seize assets and send their battle groups over. It's a little frustrating when it comes to, there's a few gaps in the system and setting of Lancer right now when it comes to having these ships move around and start firing on people and trying to figure out, all right, why are these people fighting? What do these assets mean that they're actually getting? Like, why do these assets matter? What are the logistics of the assets that these factions control that they're trying to take from one another? What is their importance? If I don't know their importance, it's pretty difficult to turn that into mission fodder. It's actually really. So I've been trying to write, not trying to, I've been successfully writing on like the subject of creating operations for, I'm as a traveler again, creating operations for Lancer, where I start tying these individual types of assets to missions that you would be playing, specifically sets of 2 to 4 missions that you would be playing. Like if you think about it, these missions usually don't take place in a vacuum. You're trying to get at something. In fact, the missions feel kind of bad if they take place in a vacuum, because then there's no real consequences for failure. You fail to sit rep, you fail to control something, you fail to wipe somebody out. It's not really clear, like what happens afterwards. What's the thing behind us that's making us do this? That's making us take this mission to begin with. I don't know. Well, if you don't know, and if there's any kind of failure, then you have nothing to really fall back on. It's not a great situation to be in. So I started thinking about missions in the terms of like an operation. Now, a lot of the Lancer supplements that have been coming out recently, Operation Solstice Reign, that didn't come out recently, but the sequel to it came out recently, Operation Winter Scar. These are clumps of missions that are focused on generally a single area or single objective for your players to take advantage of and play through. And so the missions themselves connect together. And if I can figure out a top-down way to get these missions to connect together, then I'll be good to go. I've been doing that, but I've been spurred on to I've been spurred on to double down on it, we'll say. I've been spurred on to. I feel like I have to get it done soon, because there's other people working on this project, which means I need to beat them. So, for instance, Amaranth I saw this thread on Twitter saying that she likes Lancer, but she feels like Lancer is missing a modular campaign framework, which is, of course, correct. A lot of things in Traveler are just like implied by a lot of needs are implied by the universal world profile. So this thing has like a Dagon has a frontier. I look at these codes now and I know what they mean. It has a frontier quality starport. That's bad. It doesn't really serve as fuel. It doesn't really serve fuel. If it does serve fuel, it's going to be unrefined. Doesn't really serve for repairs. It's a place to take a leak and then get out of there. That's not great. So this planet has a need in that they need a better starport, and they only have 100 people. Theoretically, probably, they need more people, because gosh, even if you have like mind-controlled monstrosity with miniguns strapped to their backs, and you have a bunch of remote-controlled wrecking units that are dedicated to unearthing and excavating the lost technology around you, while your primary campus is defended by subalterns and specter racks and autonomous mechanized infantry. you still need a few pilots around. You still need some dedicated combat staff around, and some of your people. It's a terrorist cell, so some your scientists are going to be often your not necessarily your best fighters, but sometimes equipped with your best experimental equipment. Those are the ones testing it, and gosh, if you're getting attacked, I suppose it's time to test it in the field. But they probably need more people. And so, in operation, if the players are helping out these tech terrorists, then they're going to be focused on getting a shipment of friendly people, friendly, whether that's more researchers or more soldiers, whatever have you, more mech chassis to these people. Or on the flip side, now that I know that goal, I can have an operation centered around. If an operation is centered around either fortifying this base or taking it out, I can have missions focused on their needs, right? So the player faction battle group is moving in. We'll say on Dagon. It's not yet moving in on a different planet to the left. It's moving in on Marn, which is the whole point of their current. That was the whole point of their attacking the Beksinski. Is the Beksinski is FTL capable? They want IPSN is moving a battle group over to Marn. They want to take out the Beksinski before the battle group gets there, so the Beksinski can't move over and grab a whole bunch of can't go move over and grab a bunch of pirate reinforcements to bring over to Marn. And that means that it's going to be easier for that battle group to take over Marn. Hello, Laura Purcell. Haven't seen you here before, and it's nice to meet you. So there's that need there starts connecting to missions because the players are going to, we'll say, going back to the example of Dagon, it's only got 100 people and it has a starport that sucks. So two things that the players can do before the main force arrives trying to take out this fortress on this planet that's very low staffed but has a ton of mechanized infantry, has a ton of remote controlled exotic equipment, and a ton of like mind controlled local monstrosities that have had weapons strapped to their backs because the Horizon cells are insane. They still need more people, and they need a better spaceport. So player missions can focus on stopping them from achieving these goals. And if the player missions fail, then I can have a better idea what kind of consequences there will be, how much more difficult it will be for the next mission. If, for instance, the population of this planet significantly increases, and then you have a ton of more well-equipped, extremely well-equipped, experimentally equipped mech chassis and other vehicles ready to meet the players. Well, now we gotta drag some IPSN ships or some other friendly player ships off of their current assignments to aid with the assault on this fortress. Well, now there's new goals. Now, before 100 people, players can take them. Players can take 100 people. 100 mech chassis scattered between mech chassis, damage control teams, squads, security forces, whatever. Players can take that. So they don't need like a giant fleet to reinforce them. So it's not a problem if this fortress has like a giant orbital cannon attached to it, or 5 of them attached to it, because they're going to be able to, oh, my day was pretty good actually, pretty productive. At least I feel like it was productive. I did a ton of work on this stuff. Players can take them out. You have these orbital cannons around. That's not really a problem for the players. They're just going to drop on the other side of the. They're going to drop on the other side of the planet, make their way over. The orbital cannon's probably not going to notice them to begin with. Whatever. Whatever. That's fine. Totally fine. But if there's suddenly 2,000 people here, most of whom are combatants, because the players failed to stop reinforcements from arriving at this planet, now the players need reinforcements in order to take it. And the players' reinforcements are vulnerable to the 5 orbital cannons stationed around the fortress. So now their mission has changed. In order to complete their mission, they can't just skip straight to the boss room. You know, they can't just deploy wherever they want. Sorry, if you want to take this place, and you do want to take this place if you want to finish your mission and level up your license level, you got to take out these orbital cannons first. And the consequences for not taking out the orbital cannons, pretty obvious. You got a crashed spaceship. And maybe that's not like, maybe that doesn't result in like punitive consequences for the players. I don't think it should, even. At the very least, though, that spaceship is now no longer available for the players to call on. Certainly not going to call any favors on other ship captains at that point. Not for a while. Laura says, "What is this? This is a Lancer game." So I'm prepping for my Lancer campaign, which has been ongoing. Right now, I'm talking about this other person's thread about how Lancer lacks a modular campaign reference or network or means of creating a modular campaign, and it's unfortunate. I'm going to read the rest of this person's thread. This is far and away not the only campaign framework which can work, let alone the one that I use, but several good modules, blah blah blah. I'm not really interested in the disclaimers. This person has posted an image here, probably of, it looks like Foundry VTT, which I'm also using. What it looks like is almost like a point crawl of different locations that the players can visit, and there's going to be encounters there. They're going to focus different missions, they're going to focus on different locations around here, and things are progressing at each location depending on how much time the players spend, whether they're doing downtime, whether they're taking a full repair, whether they're doing free actions during each phase. So all of these places are kind of advancing. The clock is always ticking. It looks like on this in this person's campaign framework, which is cool. I'm gonna have a lot of praise for this, and then I'm gonna have a little bit of, I guess, I'll describe where I differ with this person and my strategy for doing this. See here. One of the key, this person says, I'm a noted XCOM fangirl. One of the key elements of XCOM games, especially the newer series, is the geoscape full of conditions and hotspots. A good GM can already sort of simulate that, but how do we support that? Play cycles. This is an interesting idea. Like, yes, you can just rip Titanfall 1 or 2 and port it into a Lancer game, probably most of your favorite sci-fi media, and make a Lancer campaign out of it. Problem is, you have to sort of rip it wholesale. You can't really change the individual encounters or missions all that much, or else if things go wrong, that Jenga tower is going to fall. You're not going to be able to fall back on the structure. Because you copied the structure, if you start modifying it, then you're not going to be able to rely on the structure that you copied because it's already been changed, except by accident. Maybe things won't go wrong, but it's not going to succeed. So there are hotspots. These are XCOM 2 mission targets, your Battletech flashpoints. Where these are marked, you have a guaranteed tactical objective, most probably including a mech fight, but exceptions may apply. This is the familiar game, so she's outlined all these different hotspots that you can visit. Like I said, like a point crawl. Players select a hotspot, they play through that sequence. Maybe it's a one-off fight, maybe it's a stage set piece, it varies. And then you begin a new phase. Time ticks forward 1 unit. The players get some free actions and then decide again. Kind of like the normal Lancer mission structure so far, but localized. Localized, where you see progress along the map, that different things are happening, and you're basically choosing which one isn't going to finish, or you can deal with it. Downtime actions are mentioned in the free actions overview, so a note on those. In Lancer proper, the exact parameters of downtime actions are vague. I dislike that. I dislike that framing. Some actions are better than others in the core book. If I have a limited action budget, why would I choose to get a damn drink when I could be choosing buy some time, or scrounge or barter, or power to cost for guaranteed results? Yes, you could do it for the character and drama, but one of the work in progress segments of Project Geoscape, a title I literally just came up with, subject to change, is redefining downtime actions and categorizing them between strategic and NERPs. NERPs are free if you want to do a character bonding scene with the squad just to do it, fine. Outside of a strict time, opportunity, pressure situation, this framework will not punish you for saying, let's us gals go out to dinner as a squad. Diegetic time passes, but it doesn't use up time. Free actions. Strategic actions are the ones that cost you. So I'm going to keep scrolling down. It makes sense as a framework so far. Any questions in the chat so far? What should she replied? He seems nice. I need to help him. Let's see. So if I'm going further down. Yes, alright, here's my favorite part. Once the phase is started, players can spend time units to do a lot of things. Each time they spend one or more time units, the thing they spent on happens, and then the spent units of time pass. You might notice that all the current hotspots have time remaining, which is excellent. This is like one-to-one time in the fantasy games that we where for each day that passes in real life, one day passes in game. And we stick with that structure primarily to make sure that people, how do I put this? We stick with that structure to make sure that because time passes at a consistent basis that is independent from the referee, right? I don't choose how long time is going to pass. I cannot be argued into stretching out the weeks or whatnot, or letting players fill up as many actions as possible outside of a session. The players have dedicated downtime. They know that time is progressing. They know that time is happening. And this is, despite using a very different mechanism for time passing at a consistent rate that is kind of independent of the referee, still has the same effect. I think it's better for Lancer specifically because it has this downtime structure. So the players know that every time they do something, it has a unit of time is going to pass equal to the thing that they did. They can still, it seems like they can still kind of like freeze, but in Lancer, there's no, that's okay in Lancer because every time you're playing, you're going to like the next mission there. If you're going to a mission, then downtime is already concluded. Right, your active session play is primarily just, being on a mission. So when the time remaining hits 0, the hotspot resolves. The consequences of resolution will vary from case to case. Right now, the players on my sample map don't have a solid intel network, so they currently have to guess at those consequences. It expires is one possibility. Other possibilities include it changes the map and then moves, it changes the map and then expires, and morphs into another hotspot, gives one faction a benefit and expires, gives a faction a disadvantage and then expires, and then some. Not all lost opportunities. And then apparently there's another layer of assets and tags. In our case, the team has 2 assets, a mysterious black box, which will become relevant as a key item, and an allied squad. Squad is a series of tags that affects hotspots or tasks that are deployed to, some good and some bad. My squad edge case is loyal, unpredictable, carefree, and catastrophe. So I'm guessing that generally speaking, they're not going to abandon the party, but they're not going to always follow directions. They don't care about the consequences of not following directions, and they're more likely to get in trouble. So they're more likely to get themselves and the players in trouble by extension, but they're not going to leave the players with the consequences of their actions. They're also not going to change. So the players, the benefits are these people are unpredictable, and they're going to stick by you, and they're going to think outside of the box. That's useful for NPCs, but at the same time, the players don't have like an easy excuse to get rid of them. These are the kinds of NPCs that you would play. I'm just reading this off of a couple of tags, so I could be completely off the mark. But my understanding, or my guess, is that they're the kinds of people that are difficult to get rid of. which is kind of cool, especially if the tags sort of proc or activate once they get to different hotspots. Tags on player assets are always known once they're assigned. If an asset has a hidden tag, that tag won't affect the strategic layer until it's revealed. Possible for an asset to start with no tags. A moderately experienced professional squad is just a squad. Lastly, there's lasting effects. Various effects and outcomes can change your reputation with factions. Descriptive, by the way. See if there's a play example, so I'm going to keep going. So the players are free to spend as much time as they desire during each phase. They don't get another set of free actions with each time they spend, though they're more likely to generate dramatic scenes as they go. Once they engage a hotspot, the phase ends and repeat. There's a lot more to talk about, a lot more going into the pot. Hotspots have their own tags, which are also often unknown until investigated. Some hotspots don't expire, others have a this is a story event hotspot, and the outcome or resolution will close out like a campaign phase. So this is cool to me. It is cool. It's not. Hmm, feels very kind of like Blades of the Dark or attached to a lot of other story games, which is cool. I like going over those, and I like listening to them. I like hearing people play them. I personally and I'm glad that this person is doing this. I'm glad Amaranth is like taking the initiative on creating a modular campaign framework, similar to how my buddy Night Danger is creating a modular campaign framework for mysteries. However, I my personal preferences for campaign generation are often at a kind of I don't know if this is bottom up or top down. I'll describe it and they'll try to figure it out. What I like to do is I like to generate the individual component that players are going to face, serve as obstacles for the players, and that they will overcome to acquire reward. And I like once I have those individual components packaged next to one another and set up for me to view, I like interpreting that as a mission. Or I like interpreting the final result that I'm looking at as being a mission that I can access and use for whatever reason. I would like that campaign framework for Lancer, which is what I recently started out on. So I'm going to go to Lancer Encounters, Lancer Encounter Tables. Cool. Then I have my block generator. So what really I want is the equivalent of I really want the equivalent of Appendix A for D&D, where you're just rolling a D20 and occasionally a D100, sorry, percentile dice, and you're coming up with a that produces a dungeon. Produces a dungeon, it produces its inhabitants, it produces hazards and treasure to find inside the dungeon, and the different modifiers that might come along with that treasure. And once I have that dungeon in front of me, I can sort of interpret that as I can interpret the vibe of that location and start attaching goals to it. I'd like something similar for Lancer. I don't think it's too hard to do. I do think that the designers were too humble. I think that they knew that I think they could probably do this in like 10 minutes. They're genuinely impressive people. But they didn't do it, which frustrates me. They I think they want other people to kind of generate these campaign structures on their own, which I just think that they went a little bit too far in the other direction though. So what I have here are blocks, basically the equivalent of dungeon room. If I want to have like a fortress, yeah, if I want to have a fortress, there's going to be defensive blocks. There's going to be logistical blocks. The defensive blocks are going to be things like you could see here, a mech hack. Right? You go over by this way, more of the enemies that you're going to fight are going to be mechs, as opposed to like a barracks where more of the enemies are going to be just regular squads, or a tank garage. If you go over there, you're going to find a tank. Same idea. Anti-air, that's going to mess with any kind of aerial assets that you have in the region. If you're a flying mech, hey, let's see here. Hoisting says, I enjoyed my time at your Lancer table. Hearing your views on this is interesting in retrospect. should have talked at the beginning. Hoiston played my hate game for a while. I'm going to reiterate something I said at the beginning because nobody's watching at the beginning. I liked my campaign. I enjoyed the assets that I built during that campaign, but the reason part of the reason why I'm running a bigger game right now is because I feel like I need to build up before I pull the trigger on either another paid campaign or a larger grand campaign West Marcher style server for Lancer. I need more assets. I need way more assets. I want those assets to be there first, especially for like a grand campaign style server where I'm having a bunch of different people. If I'm having a bunch of different people like run in the same sector, basically, I need them to be able to, I need some standard for them to rely on how to create a modular campaign, or at the very least, a modular mission. And it needs to fit within an operation. People need to be able to pick a target, understand the consequences of picking this target and player success, and then they need 2 to 4 missions to focus in on that target and how it's going to change the campaign map. So that's why I'm doing this. And while the other person decided to do this in kind of like a Blades in the Dark, like from a narrative perspective, focusing on what kind of narrative beats you can hit, which I love, I'm focused a little bit more on kind of like really, let's say, down to earth. I want to focus on the individual segments that imply the presence of other segments that, when packaged together, imply a wider purpose to the mission or wider purpose to the campaign even. So I have like these defensive blocks, I have logistical blocks, there's evacuation shuttles. The presence of evacuation shuttles, a transit system that evacuates personnel away from the facility, usually to another one, implies, basically it explicitly calls out the existence of another facility nearby. So if my one of my DM, one of my referees that's running Lancer for me in my server for the Westmark for the Grand Campaign rolls this up into a facility, that kind of implies that, like, hey, there's either going to be a side mission or a full mission that's going to be focused on that other facility. Fantastic. Similar to how, like in D&D, if I'm rolling up a random dungeon and I get a key on one floor, get a locked door on another floor, the presence of the key on one floor kind of implies the use, implies its own use, implies its own player goal or player side objective. Or the presence of a magic item implies a wider campaign focus. Where did this thing come from? Where is it supposed to be? Why is the player going to be able to use it? That's interesting to me. I'd like to just do it over again. Power, yeah, the presence of like a fusion reactor, power plant, refinement, etc. Something I wrote in my Substack article that's forthcoming on the subject is I'm basically making dungeons for Lancer. These blocks. These are all bite-sized encounters, both for mech combat and for narrative play, which is important. Packaged together like an easy meal for the referee to digest. They're all when I'm arranging these things, I'm doing it in a way that the individual components can be generated partially randomly, but also are implied by other blocks, right? If you have like, what is it? I have R&D. We're not going to do that one because I don't want to spoil my players. We have interstellar comms stolen from Titanfall 2. There's a giant interstellar relay beacon. There's a huge, like, kilometer long satellite dish that's set up ping to ping communications between like across the galaxy. Includes a power core, optic data projector stream, comms core, and at least 4 support struts. In addition to the interstellar dish, that's the thing. So the implication is like, all right, there's a bunch of like there's a bunch of like powered materials inside this dish and whatnot. Cool. And what was it? At least 4 support struts. That's like a structural vulnerability at the very least. And then if I put in this other thing, requires a power station, of size. Eight to 10. Oops. 8 to 10. Then I need to go back and I need to figure out what a power station is that's a size 8 to 10. Now, I already have an example of this because I played Titanfall. Played Titanfall 2 as well. That's where I'm going to be pulling the example from. Here, let me set this to live chat so I can just see everything. So what does a size 10 power station look like? Well, this is a really big installation, so it needs a really big power station. Size 10 installation, it's gonna look like it's gonna be so big that it's basically a map unto itself or a level unto itself that's just dedicated to generating power, to keeping everything, and to maintaining structural integrity of the base, and 3, maintaining the structural integrity of the power station itself. So there's a size 1 or size 2 power station might just be like a generator, a battery rack next to it, or something like that. A size 10 is going to be like multiple levels, and it's going to have these vent corridors carved out into it that with no floor, basically, that are just pumping, and coolant tanks that are pumping coolant throughout the entirety of the facility because it's so massive. That was a scene of like forward-based Kodai, or the map forward-based Kodai in Titanfall 2. No, that's the multiplayer map, which is also one of these though. The map, the campaign mission was the beacon, and the whole idea was get here, you find a bunch of your buddies. They need to send a signal to the militia fleet to let them know, hey, get back here. There's a super weapon that they're going to launch at our home planet. We'd better fix this fast. But the dish is broken. It's actually broken in 2 places. One, they can't actually feed power to the dish to get it to move because the power station itself is broken. So now your pilot has to go down into the bowels of this place and acquire something that's going to repower or reset power where your buddies are at. Then once that's done, it turns out the dish like comms array is broken. And it's this module that you have to swap out on the dish itself. Now pilot has to go all the way up, and they got to fight enemies that are being airdropped in by the support struts of this place, and he's got to make it on top of the dish and swap out the comms module, we'll say, right there. Let's see here. Hoisting says, what do you think of having the other options be left to other teams and you leaving it to a roll to see how the NPCs did as a little added dynamism to the world, maybe using a roll 2d6? I will get to that soon. Basically, my opinion of that is that I completely agree. And yes. Oh, let me put that up. I was coming up with this stuff not actually originally the impetus for this was I wanted to come up with more of like a narrative generation for these other kind of implied conflicts that could emerge out of our lovely system. I was going to do that I was basically designing extra classes for Lancer, right? Lancer, technically speaking, if you look at the game like I do, where basically a faction game, a war game, that has a more narrative campaign underneath of it, focused on the operations that will affect the war game upon completion, or upon. I consider like battle group captains; those are a class. The Lancer pilots; those are a class. Lancer pilots can differ from one another in terms of their equipment, their loadout, their skill triggers, feats, talents, whatever. But they mostly focus on a single domain of play, they command 2 domains of play, which are downtime and mech combat. Those are their classes. And then you have the battle group captains that command, it's implied that they command the domain of like this wider war game, but they also command fleet to fleet combat. So you have that. I was thinking, what if you had like an operator? What if you had like an operator class operating other vehicles or deploying resources to a battlefield? What if the guy, like the Helldiver Super Destroyer, what if the guy aboard that ship is a class that's saying, all right, well, we're going to deploy, yep, we're going to deploy some air support over here, and we're going to resupply you with ammo over this way, or, and, but no, sorry, we can't hang out in low atmosphere anymore because we're getting fired at. We can't do that. That's like a class. What are some things to interact with that class? That's what I started thinking about. Ditto for the spy. What's a spy look like in Lancer? Well, they're sneaking into like research facilities and they're trying to steal technology or steal data, or they're trying to figure out like where troops are moving. They're embedded in the interior of they're like a junior officer aboard an enemy battle group. They're trying to subtly manipulate or just steal data on what the ship is equipped with so that their friendly fleet can get away. That's what the spy class is doing. What do they interact with here? They're primarily going to have like this either if they're aiding combat indirectly, or if they're interacting with narrative blocks around the arena, right? Narrative blocks around their domain, the primary mission. What are they doing there? Well, now I know. Blocks. So I have these dungeon rooms that people can interact with either in mech combat or in narrative play, or maybe a little bit of both. They're designed to kind of blur the lines here. So we have things like, yeah, air defense. No, do I want to do that one? What do I want to go with? Drone racks, E-war shielding, orbital cannon. Oh, here we go. This is one I edited recently. Mortars serve as interdiction for forces moving into a base. Mortars, when they hit troops, grant the base a free roll versus those troops attempting to enter the base. So the idea, a free roll versus their tenacity. Battlegroup has this mechanic for boarding. The boarders have a stat called tenacity, and the battlegroup gets to roll against them in order to try to kick those boarders out. Well, it turns out that actually works really, really well. I think that actually works perfectly well for a ground-based fortress. So if the players are being accompanied, if the players are being accompanied, oh, see it, with a bunch of like friendly troops, like a bunch of friendly squads, and they're trying to pour into the base in different areas. Well, how do we determine whether the friendly troops get into a place versus whether they're getting suppressed? Do I play out each of these individual encounters like I'm playing a war game? Mm, Lancer doesn't do that. It doesn't. Not during a pilot combat, anyways. So I'm inclined to follow suit. I think that's fine. Let's see, that's a Game Master's Guide. Where is weapons and upgrades? All vessels engaged. Posture and uptime actions. We're going to keep scrolling down until I find tenacity. What do we got here? All units capable of boarding an enemy vessel have a tenacity rating that represents how difficult it is to dislodge them once they are aboard. Boarded ships roll against the boarding unit's tenacity to repel them if they do not perform a maneuver on their turn to do so automatically. There you go. NPC boarders. We're not going to go over that just at the moment. Well, actually, no. NPCs can also attempt boarding actions against player capital ships. These boarding actions have unique effects, but otherwise work identically to player boarding actions. Likewise, players repel NPC boarders the same way, either by each boarded vessel succeeding on a roll against the boarding party's tenacity at the end of its turn, or by its battle group committing to a maneuver called to clear all boarders from all capital ships in the battle group. Boarding actions also represent an ideal place to take a break from battle group and play out a mission in Lancer if your group wants to get into the action with their own mechs and pilots, which is awesome. Yeah, that is a phase dedicated to boarding. Internal defenses, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Boarding phase. I should just scroll up a little bit. During the boarding phase, the players that have initiated boarding actions issue commands to those units. If multiple boarding rolls occur during this step, resolve their order as you would for anything else. Player roll first, then an NPC, and so on. Choose a command and roll 1d20 against the boarded ship's internal defenses of 8. On a 7 or less, the boarders fail to make progress. On 8 or higher, they successfully carry out your command. So the sabotage fire control, we have like 3 different commands here by default. Sabotage fire control, the boarded ship's battle group makes a single target attack. All single target attack rolls with +2 difficulty until the end of their next turn. Sever comms, the boarded ship's battle group cannot use tactics until the end of their next turn. Assault CIC, the boarded ship's battle group cannot move player battle groups with actions or abilities until the end of their next turn. And then a ship that has been boarded has 2 options for attempting to repel active boarders. Let's see here. Yeah, there's the thing about doing it as a maneuver during the action phase. They don't automatically destroy the boarding units, but it does buy the besieged ship some breathing room. Internal defenses at the end of its battle group's turn. Player of a boarded ship automatically rolls 1d20 to represent its internal defenses. It rolls against the boarding unit's tenacity listed in its description. If the boarded ship succeeds, then it ejects the boarders, inflicts casualties sufficient to force them back, otherwise drives them off back to their own ship. This doesn't destroy the boarded unit specified, but does free it up to be used again in later turns. Yeah. There we go. Hoistine says, I would think you've considered this already, but I might suggest having some rooms mapped out to where half-size mechs and humans can fit. Different size hallways intended for different size mechs, etc. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, I did think of that. Because, God, I really love having pilots get out of their ships, get out of their mechs and start messing around inside for some pilot combat. And I did that with the Beksinski. Of course, the players didn't actually go along with that. The players just started destroying walls, which was their prerogative. They were going loud. Right? That's okay. And the pirates responded in kind. They had a tank in the cargo hold, and tanks aren't really that useful, and they're really just not that useful in space. Predictably. But if you have, like, a support gunship that the tank can kind of, like, stick to, it can carry the tank, so it get outside the main vessel so the tank can start shooting, turns out that was pretty effective. Pretty hilarious at the same time. But there are things that are intended for, if I scroll over here, because we're actually going to start switching over. Sentry turrets, 1d6 damage to targets moving into the line and delays incoming troops. So basically a delay doesn't repel boarders in the same way that would in Lancer, but it does restrict. There's a bunch of grunts over there, it's going to kill them, it's going to damage troops they're moving in. Basically, it represents, okay, do we have any friendly NPCs in this area yet? No, because there's this other block in the way that's delaying them. So the players, so those NPCs at the moment, free to attack the players and reinforce the attacks on the players. And the beauty of this is I don't think it needs to be super strict as is. I think it's just something that, like, because I don't think that most operations are going to include, typically, most operations don't include a ton of player allies moving in, but for the ones that do, all of a sudden you're taking way more of these blocks into account. Here's a tank garage. An MBT, a main battle tank, can be re-outfitted at one of these stations, taking at least 1 encounter to swap a main weapon, or 2 encounters to swap a secondary weapon. Those should be reversed. It should be 1 encounter to swap a secondary weapon, or 2 encounters to swap a main weapon. There we go. 2 friendly operators can pilot the tank if given an encounter's worth of time. That should set up to set up. Can pilot an unoccupied tank if given an encounter's worth of time to set up. Up to 1 operator can be subbed out for a pilot with appropriate skill or background. So that's one of our ins for like pilots to start moving in, and then we put down like or fixed to like sabotage a main battle tank or whatnot. So somebody can, if the players go into the tank garage, then there's going to be a tank in there. And so the players go in with their mechs over to the tank garage. Somebody's going to spot them, and whatever's going on with the tank right now, whatever last minute tune-ups are being applied to that tank, the players are now in combat. But if one of the players ditches their mech, finds it somewhere, whatever, maybe another mech in a mech garage or in a tank garage that they've already cleared out, they sneak over to the tank garage and they go in and they can start sabotaging that MBT, which is good because main battle tanks are absolutely terrifying. The players did not even scratch this thing. Honestly, there were like 6 rounds of combat. No, sorry, there were 4 rounds of combat. And we didn't even finish everything. Players scratched this thing. Has 2 structure, 2 stress. It took 3 hit points worth of damage. That's the idea between things like, for instance, I have maintenance halls that are in logistics, I believe, either in logistics or mundane. No, they're in logistics. Some of these are spread out. You might think that barracks and armor are technically part of defenses, but I don't really think so. I think they're logistical concerns. I think the benefits that they've conferred to the local NPCs are going to be logistical in nature, which is also a really fun part of this. Is basically, if the players need to defend a friendly system, then this is kind of their opportunity to play a little tower defense. And more importantly, it's going to be, if the players are being forced to defend a place, I think this kind of structure makes it really easy on the GM, because you could just have a dedicated size for these fortresses. You could say, all right, it's going to be like size 5, which means it has up to 5 of these and up to 3 of these. Players arrange these however you would have until next session. You have the day before next session. And then that takes a little bit of burden off the GM, because the players are the ones defending it. They might as well be intimately familiar with whatever they're defending. If they don't, and they might not be interested in crap, right? Might be like, I'm not doing stuff for this game in between the regular sessions. I knew that something was going on. Let me back my 20th century whatchamacallit. Yeah, there we go. The players might not be interested in it. That's fine. You have another GM do it. You could do it. It's not that difficult, but like you can pitch it. The fact that you can pitch it to the players, I think, is fun. I think it's an advantage of the system, especially in places where they're not normally used to having a ton of cover or access to cover. I was talking about this with one of my players recently, Joe, Armored Alcatraz, who is dealing with. He's making a map and he's looking over and he's like, look, there's really not much cover on this, but I'm not sure what else to put here on this place that's like kind of open. It has a bunch of cars that size 1 mechs can kind of hide behind. Definitely half size mechs can hide behind. But if there's a size 2 mech here, it really doesn't have anything to hide behind it. And it's like this civilian evacuation. I said, hey, I don't know how I came up with this, but I said, hey, give your players tell them that as part of the evac team, for being part of the evac team, the people who are coming in to evacuate civilians, they have like empty ships on their way in. So they brought extra supplies. Let the players choose spaces set up size to cover in advance. Because if the GM sets up the cover, he's sort of committing to the cover being good and useful, and he's kind of like establishing to the players like, all right, it has to, like, that's the implication of putting it down. And is that avoidable? Is that a problem? No. But if you have a large space of open space, and you're not sure whether to fill it up or let the players take advantage of that or decide whatever, like, I mean, the playable cover is already a thing in Lancer. This is just like, hey, I get to solve one of my problems, and the players get to potentially solve one of their problems if I just turn this into a reserve that they can use during the combat, or maybe during the mission. So I hope all that makes sense so far. At the moment, what I really like to do is, because this is technically campaign prep, is I need to add some NPCs. I go over and click, not roll, something I'm thinking. Labels. A bunch of these, I deleted so many of these, and they're back because of I synchronized it incorrectly. That's a little annoying, actually. That's a lot. Oh, I just got a message from Dundermoose playing the Pirates of Cozy. Very good. Very, very good. He's now come to understand that yes, he does control it. Okay. Pagan, Horizon. I have yeah, so I have user labels to indicate where these I have user labels to indicate the planet and then the faction affiliation. Apparently, apparently, I think CopCon is actually going to have some kind of extra. This is going to be really nice. CopCon is apparently going to have an extra section for factions to label these people with, which is going to be excellent. So Dagon, Horizon, these are people affiliated with the with the Solani Research Center, which is a Horizon cell. And I have supports, which I think have RPP and industrial templates. Yeah, the supports, those are there. Support is an interesting thing to add industrial to, because support normally doesn't deal damage to anything. But if you start attaching industrial to it, you get all of a sudden these weapon options. And they're not great. They have good HP. They have good armor, which is also kind of cool. Oh, hi, buddy. What's the matter? But industrial and remote piloted vehicle templates really make it easy to just start messing with their systems and messing with tech attacks. And they're like permanently impaired. So it's a great like remote vehicle kind of option. And then I started going into, do I have monstrosity? Yeah, I didn't do a lot with this. I just know that they have. I know that Horizon has monstrosities, local wildlife that they have started attaching. Are you joking, sweetheart? Clear. There we go. So I know that they've begun attaching guns and other equipment to local monstrosities that the local megafauna, just fauna, whatever, megafauna, started attaching guns to them and like little brain controlling devices and whatnot. I remember there was a character in Evolve who was a tracker, and I don't remember the name of the tracker. I know that his pet like bat creature was called Gobi. Gobi Evolve. Crow, that was the name of the hunter, the hero that could use Gobi. Gobi is Crow's pet bat ray. Serves as his main tracking ability. When sent out, he flies in front of the hunters for a short while, highlighting all entities in range before flying back to Crow's shoulder. see here. It's tame bat ray. While the easily startled birds are normally untamable, Gobi is equipped with a set of goggles called a neotenic stimulator that acts somewhat like the hood of a hunting falcon, allowing Crow to handle him with ease. Very cool. Very cool. That's kind of the idea here with these monstrosities. So I'm not going to edit them just now. Hoisting, what do you think about what we were discussing earlier, considering all of those different, considering basically the blocks and the operations generator? Also, while he types that out, I have a naming convention where I start using like Mark 1 for something a normal NPC, Mark 2 indicates that it's got Mark 2, 3, and 4 indicate that it has some kind of like upgrade, and then I repeat that structure for because you could add optional features on. So and Mark 1, 2, sorry, Mark 2, 3, and 4 always have the same upgrades for each NPC class, right? So if you see a Mark 3 Sentinel, it's always going to have the same upgrades as all other Mark 3 Sentinels, which I think is what is it? Eye of Midnight. Not a optional? No, the optional is Bodyguard and Reflexive Blow. Wrathlock. Yeah, the Sentinel arms the systems. Once armed, the Sentinel attacks twice the next time they attack with their combat shotgun instead of one. And Bodyguard lets the Sentinel choose an allied character within range 5 as their ward and gains the Reflexive Blow reaction, where they shoot their shotgun to somebody attacking their ward. So anytime they come across a Mark III Sentinel, it's going to be that, except this one is affiliated with Horizon, so it has an extra template, exotic, top of it. So that's how I differentiate. That's how I give people a consistent naming convention, so they know the rough power of the NPCs that they're fighting, but they still have access to this. But I still have access to ways to kind of switch things up on them through the use of templates. And it's also a means of me identifying or creating like a faction identity. What do players find when they go against Horizon? Well, they find a lot. Wait, what is it? Default? No. I want to be digging. Actually, we're going to go to adding new NPC. When they're fighting Horizon, they're going to find a lot of remote piloted and industrial vehicles because Horizon doesn't have that many people to access, and they don't want to spend a lot of their people doing manual labor or like menial labor, we'll say. So they're going to focus more. They're going to have a lot of drones at their disposal because they have a staff problem. And on top of that, because they have a staff problem, a lot of their vehicles are going to be a lot of their vehicles that they use for kind of regular that they use for the more menial aspects of the research, like archaeological digs or excavations or construction. That has to be something that can be controlled by one person or one NHP for an extended period of time. That not everybody needs to be involved with that project. So that's kind of the approach there. Is for a lot of their grunt works are just drone in some way or remote piloted vehicles, and the remote piloted vehicles show up with the industrial template because they're not primarily used for security. They're primarily used for construction and other mundane like stuff that you use industrial equipment for. So that's one side of their faction. The other two sides of their faction are, again, because they have a staffing problem, they take control of monstrosity, and they equip them with weapons, and they equip them with some kind of gear that indicates that makes them friendly to Horizon personnel, or makes them ignore Horizon personnel. It makes them more deadly against basically a kind of natural defense network that begins forming over the cell as it becomes harder and harder to access. Monstrosities can already be nasty on their own, but you start tacking templates onto them, it's way nastier. And then for their primary combat staff, you're looking at exotic equipment, very exotic equipment, because these guys. Horizon is like Horus. They hate Horus, but they're like Horus in that they use a lot of exotic technology. So if I get main battle tank, and this thing is horrific. Hull 4, agility -2, engineering 2, structure 1, armor 2, massive. When people are rolling primarily D3s and D6s, sometimes not rolling anything, they're just dealing flat damage. Reducing the damage taken by 2 is huge. HP 20. That's a lot compared to most NPCs to begin with. Heat capacity 10, that's very good. Speed 5, that's also good. Save 11, not so bad. Evade 6, that's very bad. E-defense 8, that's average. Sensor 10. Size 2, yeah. Armaments. When creating a main battle tank, choose exactly one of its heavy weapon options, exactly one of its main weapon options. Rolling Thunder. The MBT can't take the grunt template, and only a single MBT may be present in any scene. This NPC is so deadly and so effective that you can only have one given scene. Full tracked, MBT has to move in a straight line. It can move and boost in separate directions, though. Additionally, the MBT can't swim, climb, manipulate objects, or make melee attacks other than ram, but it does ignore difficult terrain and has immunity to prone, which composite. This is the where the horror begins. Composite armor. One side of the MBT is an armored facing. Choose one side of its token, icon, or miniature, which is visible to all characters. Attacks and effects that trace a line directly to this facing treat the MBT as though it has 6 armor and resistance to damage from blast, burst, line, and cone attacks and effects. 6 armor and resistance. Remember, some people are rolling a D3 for damage. Most people are rolling D6s for damage. 6 armor. Any damage, AP damage, burn, and any damage taken by the MBT while it is shredded is still reduced by 2. Basically, all the effects that can bypass armor or conditions that make it so your armor doesn't count, all of those effects are still reduced by 2 when coming from attacks and effects made against his facing. Though notably, it doesn't say reliable. There's a tag called reliable that just says, hey, no matter what, this still deals a certain amount of damage. But reliable can be armor piercing if it also has the armor piercing tag, but it doesn't buy. It just says if you miss, you're still dealing like 2 damage. Yeah, so that's rough. MBT ignores engagement and can pass through but not stop in spaces occupied by other characters and obstructions smaller than size 3, which is most player characters. It destroys any objects it passes through in this way, and if it passes through any characters, those characters are pushed out of the way as directly as possible if able. Passing through characters as part of a boost also means that those characters must once per turn pass a hull save or take 4 kinetic damage and be knocked prone. This thing could just like run straight through you. It's ridiculous. Stable body. The MBT can't be pushed, pulled, or knocked back by smaller characters. If a hostile effect would move the MBT 2 or more spaces or knock it prone, even if the MBT blah blah blah, the character can change which side its armored facing is. Yeah, which side its armor facing is on after that effect resolves. So if you do these effects, you get to change where the armor is pointing. And then you get to the weapon. So we're gonna add a new MBT. We're gonna pick a weapon. That's not it. Oh well, I found it. Now we're gonna do this by labels. What are labels? It's on the planet Dagon, and it's affiliated with the Horizon cell there, so I've applied both my labels. It's not a mech, it's a vehicle. It's going to be tier 2 because my players are now licensed level 5 and they can face tier 2 comfortably. Even though this is still a machine of horror. But now it has a significantly, it now has HP 25, a save of 13, evade 7, e-defense 10, sensors 10 still. Pretty horrific. And I think that we're going to have multiple tank garages in this location. We're gonna have more than one of these, but we're gonna start with this one. I don't really have a naming convention for the tanks as of yet, except that I've been copying some of the I've been copying some, I think, actual names and modifying them slightly. So new MBT, we're gonna decide on a name after I do two things. So I need to pick a weapon. Remember, I get one heavy weapon and I get one main weapon. Yeah. Smoothbore cannon is always good. Is this a blast weapon? I don't think it is. But for some reason on it's listed as a blast 2 weapon. That is so weird. It's listed as a blast 2 weapon on Foundry, but it doesn't place the template for you. Like I could pull it up now actually over Foundry. If I just do this, we're gonna target whose character did I delight bullying last game? There's a lot of bullying that went on. Judge. There we go. Judge was fantastic. Definitely probably going to be, in all likelihood, one of those additional Lancer GMs. Smoothbore cannon. Yeah, if I fire this, it says +2 attack. Yeah, there you go. That's a hit. No, that's attack bonus. Yeah, that's not its blast. All right. It does have an effect where if you miss a size 1 section of any object adjacent to the target, takes 10, 20, 8. What that means is like that divvies it up by tier. You have a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 NPC. So it's tier 2, so it deals 20 AP explosive damage. And also deals 20 AP explosive damage to objects, cover, and terrain. So that's smooth bore cannon. Hmm. That's one thing. I don't think that's their style. Stabilized railgun deals tier 2, so 8 kinetic damage and a line 10 and ignores hard cover. So ignores armor. That might be what they do. Antares pattern laser cannon. 8 energy. See, energy damage definitely seems like their thing. There's an anti-tank gun. On a critical hit, the target becomes shredded until the end of the next turn. I don't think they're as worried about armor. They're more like tech focused. I don't think that they want to do shredded. I definitely don't think that they like ordnance as a tag. Street sweeper canister projector. Range 3 and cone 5. Okay. So range 3 and cone 5 means I can start the cone. I can start the cone right where I'm firing from. Or I can have it at any point up to range 3 and have the cone fire from there. So I can pick a point 3 spaces ahead and have like a timed fuse go off. That's where the cone 5 starts. You just can't change direction when it's fired. I don't think that seems like less like their thing. Harry's pattern laser cannon. That seems really, really useful for people who like using tech attacks. Tech attacks where you're messing with your enemy's sensors and often increasing the heat built up already by the reactor. So one thing that you could do in Lancer, of course, is you could take down HP, and that reduces structure. And when you take structure damage, you start losing pieces of your mech, or you start losing, or you start, either your systems go away, or you start losing pieces of like your weapon melts. Maybe you instead start taking other conditions, Of course, if you start rolling really poorly, whenever you take these structure checks, you might just get destroyed instantly. Your reactor works the same way, but it works off of heat. And the heat is usually going to be self-inflicted, except in my campaigns, because I remember that it exists, and it's part of this important trifecta, I think, of player counters. So the Antares Pass laser cannon, when it starts hitting you, it's going to deal 8 energy damage. Also means you take 4 heat. That's going to put some people in the danger zone. They have half or more of their current heat cap, or they've filled up half or more of their current heat cap quickly there. I think we got to go with this. This has to be Horizon uses. Oh, here we go. I also get 1 main. Skylight anti-air laser. If the target is flying, they must pass an agility save or choose one. Either take 1d6 plus 1d6 bonus damage, or immediately land. This counts as falling without any damage. And become unable to fly until the end of their next turn. So either they take extra damage, this is anti-air, or they are forced down. They avoid the damage by forcing themselves downward and grounding. Multi-directional charges, where this is just like, burst 2. It just explodes in like 2 spaces around the mech, and the mech is size 2, so this is technically going across like 4. Yeah, it's going a fair distance. Actually, technically 5. Starts on the space adjacent to the mech. That's pretty strong. I don't know if that's what they would go with. There's the marker nexus. On hit, the target must pass a system save or being locked on and become impaired until the end of the next turn. I think that Horizon probably uses a little bit of burn. I don't think they attach it to their, but I think that's very controlled. I don't think that they attach it to most of their, I don't think they attach it to their tanks. I think they're worried about burn, which also represents things. It's not literally fire in all cases. It could be acid. It could be like gray wash nanite swarms that are like eating your mech up until you force them out and jam them. I think that they probably tightly control that sort of thing. So it's going to exist in Horizon. It's not going to be prolific. Anti-armor missiles, arcing, armor piercing. It's interesting, not the most biggest thing in the world. Pintle-mounted machine gun. You can attack 2 targets one at a time. Yeah, I just used this on a different one. And I like the Skylight anti-air laser. I'm definitely tempted to use that one. Oh, on a hit, the target must pass a system save or gain lock on and become impaired until the end of their next turn. And it's smart, and it deals burn. That's pretty nasty. I think that they might. It's just, at the same time, keep in mind the problem with this. Keep in mind the problems that this fortress is having. They don't have enough staff. Pintle-mounted machine gun. Weapon can attack 2 targets at one time. It deals knockback 1. Would like knock the target back. Actually, yeah, I think that's fine. I just need a name for it. I don't have a naming convention for. I have a naming convention. What? All right. How was the 703 named? 703 Tank Destroyer. I think that what we've made is a tank destroyer. There we go. Object, the IS-3, also known as an Object 703. I've been messaged. Ah, very good. Very good. We're switching the fantasy campaign to Pathfinder 2nd Edition in November. Thank God. Thank God. It's too late to see combat. Soviet. So, what are the Soviet naming conventions for this tank? I'd probably Soviet naming convention. I should do tank naming convention. Soviet tank naming convention. T-72, T-80. IS-3. T-34 is an American tank. A T-34 is a Russian tank. So that's one thing. T was for tank. Usually get their name for the development project codename and design location. Kharkov Bureau, or I'm not going to try and pronounce that. I slip up and do a slur. It's never intended to be linked with their production years. We choose a code name for it. Okay, so the name is Solani Research. That's the name of the faction, the Horizon Cell that's here. So we're gonna do SRTD -100. Well, it's a tier 2. We'll do SRTD 102 to indicate. Yeah, I like that. 102 to indicate that it's a tier 2. I'm also about to. So maybe I start from 100, and that's my naming convention for that. Except, I'm also going to add a bunch of crap to this. Huh. Now that I'm adding templates, templates are back in the mix. Not doing pirate, we are doing exotic. Even in a galaxy of wonders, exotics are strange and dangerous enemies. Some feature unique technologies not yet available to the wider galaxy or wield archaic weapon styles, updated to the modern day, while others carry equipment or adopt tactics that are totally alien to Union doctrine. So we're assigning a template. We're going to add a feature. Real space extrusion, it's actually an extrusion of a higher concept entity from non-physical space. Now, we're not applying that to a tank. Living weaponry, nah, not for these guys. Paracausal weapon, choose one of the exotic's weapons. Damage from that weapon can't be reduced in any way, by armor, resistance, or otherwise. Maybe we're putting Paracausal weapon on the Pinto guy. That would be interesting. Here we go. Chronotaurus. The exotic or another character within line of sight rolls a d20, causes localized distortions in the flow of time. I don't think that's as interesting. Regenerator. At the end of the exotic's turn, they regain 1/4 of their total HP. They don't regain any HP if they've taken energy damage during the same round. That's really nasty to put on a tank, but at the same time, there's plenty of energy damage to go around. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Oh yeah, secondary gunner, we're gonna apply that just as an optional weapon system. It just means that if he's jammed or stunned, I still get to use the Pinto. So I think that will go with Paracol's weapon. This is going to be this is the most effective. This is the most effective 240 that you've seen in your life. Up to two options from the exotic and systems, yeah. Gains +1 accuracy on system saves and tech attacks against them receive +1 difficulty. That's actually really good for this thing. Doesn't have a systems bonus, but that extra d6 is going to come in handy. It means this thing is really likely to make pretty much everything except agility saves, which it has a -2. So we've got that. And then I think, I mean, if you have a tank, it's got to be the vet. I'm gonna have to update my naming convention because I used to incorporate veteran into the block names where I would have like Mark 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. But if I started adding like an elite template or a veteran template, then I would. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I think for veteran, what I do is I add a custom. I think for veteran, I add a custom name. Right. So instead of interacting with that other stuff, it's going to be like the way you know it's a veteran is that it has like a I don't know, it has Fighting Lion on it or something like that. Hmm. And it gains one veteran trait per tier. So living chassis. Nope, that's not it. Acrobat. After the veteran moves or boosts, they can fly 3 spaces. Let's not put that on a tank. Deadly. The veteran deals +1d6 damage on critical hits. Be funny. Feign death. The first time that the veteran is destroyed each combat, they are actually feigning death. They appear to be destroyed but have 1 HP. Characters adjacent to the veteran can reveal this with a successful systems check or pilot skill check. Otherwise, the veteran remains unnoticed until they move or take an action. I think that would be really useful in. I think that would be really useful. Huh. But so one of our blocks is a mech garage where they're going back and presumably getting like serviced. So if I put feign death in there and it looks like the tank is dead, it looks like it's a wreck, but like actually it's not, and they get a chance to retreat, then that'd be pretty good. So I'll think about that. Hacker, no, we're not doing for hardened target gains +1 accuracy on system save. Already has that. Headshot. Round on a critical hit, the veteran's target must pass a hull saver, only be able to draw a line of sight to adjacent spaces till the end of their next turn. So they can only attack things. If they have an effect that's reliant on line of sight, it's going to be only they can only target things adjacent to them with that. I like that. Insulated. The veteran gains immunity to burn. The veteran rolls all structure damage and overheating checks. I feel like we've already got enough defensive options. Lightning reflexes. Whenever the attack is, whenever the veteran is attacked using any heavy or super heavy weapon, roll 1d6 on a 5 plus. The attack automatically misses. That's a low chance of succeeding. Not super low. It's really annoying for players, which I normally don't mind. Trying to fit that in with like the design of this tank. It's a tank destroyer. I don't think that it really does a lot of. I'm building this off the 703, the IS-3. I don't think that this is really terrifically. I don't think a tank destroyer is terrifically mobile. limitless, the veteran can overcharge. Instead of the standard cost, they always gain 1d6 heat. That would be terrifying for something like this. I might do it. Oh, I might do that. Yeah, let's equip it through it. And then I get one more. What am I thinking of? Viper's speed always takes the first turn, even acting before NPCs. I don't think that works. A tank destroyer. Again, I don't think that works for tank destroyer. Steel jaw auxiliary weapons can't do more than 1 damage to the veteran. Oh, I might like that actually. Veteran's standard move ignores engagement and doesn't provoke reactions. It kind of already has that. Shock armor gains resistance to damage from main weapons. I might do that. Or self-repair. Once per scene as a full action, the veteran regains all HP and clears all conditions. I think, yeah, you got like a repair. You got a repair kit on you. Nanomachine, son. Sure. So we have the Solani Research Tank Destroyer 102. Not really 102 though. More likely this is a 202 or 302. I think the 100. Like the 100 slot is going to have to indicate the number of templates attached. And it starts with 1 and it goes up. It goes up by 1 for each template attached. And then the number of optional traits is going to be our second one there. And then the very last one is going to be our tier. Maybe I reverse that. Nah. This will always be like, so this will always be like 1, 2, or 3. Or I guess custom is going to increase that. The FVC custom, that'll increase that number. I need to write that down. So for tanks, why are there a bunch of viewers popping up as like probably the most boring part of, hey guys, this is how I name my tanks, and my NPCs have to have very specific naming conventions because I'm definitely not autistic. And I need to, I definitely don't have any particular need to reinforce, I don't know, telegraph the kind of enemy that's coming across my teammates. Sorry, my players. All right. Naming convention. My naming convention is that. Ah, there we go. So for naming conventions, tanks are classified by their weapon type and role, and I'll include guidelines for that. It's one of these things where I have no idea if this is going to make that big of a difference in a grand campaign. I could see it making a difference, though. I could see players looking out and saying, oh shoot, there are tier 3 pyros here. I don't want to be here. And that tier 3 pyro is an ultra elite. And I know that because it has this specific naming convention that calls it out as a block 3 TD prototype. And I don't want to be anywhere near it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to be anywhere near it. I could see that coming up. I don't know how many situations it's going to change. I think that it gives them the capacity and the choice to change the decisions there. So tanks are classified by, tanks are classified by their weapon type and role. The first number, every tank has a 3-digit code. First digit equals 1 plus the number of templates attached.
second number equals the number of optional systems attached. Third number indicates tier, and I'm going to say if the tank has the industrial, it can't take runs, so I don't have to worry about that. If the tank has the industrial, RPV, that's remote piloted vehicle, or other dysfunctional template, we'll say. Start the first number. The first number will always be big. First number is 0. I've been sent to solve. How many optional systems do I have? Secondary gunner, so I have 1. Perk also what, 2. Better see, blah, blah, blah. 3, 4. Can't be all the ones I have. Oh, technically the optional weapon, and technically speaking, these are optional weapons. I mean, really, they're listed as optional weapons. Really, they're not. I have 2 templates. How many was it without the weapon? Four without the weapon. 6 if I include. Really, really devastating choice I need to make here. 342. Sure. So now I just need from chat, calling upon you, chat. I need a nickname for this tank. It has the veteran template, which means somebody in here, somebody who commands this tank, has melted or has soldered the plate of like an anime waifu onto the side of this tank. There's no other explanation. Somebody definitely has taken a pinup girl and attached it in some way to this tank. The question is, what do they call this pinup girl? Yes, there we go. Now the highest number of viewers. The real action. What do we call this tank? In the meantime, I'm going to, while somebody chooses their answers, I'm going to look up, let's see here, tank nicknames. Diplomacy failed. Bye, Felicia. Oh, that's boring though. Diplomacy failed is kind of funny though. The military tank crews, Cora, such crap now. We'll try it. Answer. One answer. Nobody has provided me with a tank name as of yet. You've all failed me. In addition, some commanders follow the guideline that the tank name has to begin with the same letter as the battery or squadron. For instance, Bravo Battery could go for the tank names such as Better Run and Hide Black Death, Bring It On, or even Better Run and Hide, Black Death, Bring It On, or even Betty White. These are all legit, real-life examples of Abrams' name. SR. SR. So we'll need research. All right. All right, the SRTD 342 stunned grunt. I suppose I should have a name for the tank commander. It's funny because there are tables here for ship and captain background. It'd be kind of funny. I think of patron tables? No, no, no. Action tables. Ah, yeah. Builder who knows. Oh, this is like a person of interest, like a VIP. So if I roll a d20, maybe I could use that as my tank commander, who's definitely going to. And this will have no impact on his future whatsoever. Yeah, there we go. What is a 13? What does that get me? Close this nonsense out. 13 is a corporate executive, clean cut and cold eye. Interesting. Kennedy Thomas. Yeah. Former. D-level SSC executive. I'm now going to copy and paste this and send it menacingly to my. There we go. All right, yeah. So I got a new naming convention. I've got a bunch of blocks ready that I can use. I need more blocks ready, so I can actually Because I need to be able to take it into a... Oh, goodness. I need to be able to take it into a map. Actually, preferably, I don't want to have to use it in Incarnate at all. Really, what I like to do is... And I like making maps in Incarnate, and that's a lot of fun and all. But gosh, at some point, I want to just be able to take a token for these individual rooms and just kind of like drop them directly onto Foundry itself. So that way, like maybe I do in Incarnate, maybe I do like the background of the map, but I start dropping just like, okay, for the security office, I drop the token for that, or the symbol for that, and maybe like a little card or drop down that tells players different narrative actions they can take there if they're applicable. So that's fun and that's fine. So I think, what was it? 11:26. Definitely been going long enough. We ran for 2 hours and I enjoyed myself. I definitely need to continue just having a plan when I do these streams. I just had like a list of topics that I wanted to go through. Yeah, and we got through all of them. Next one I think is going to focus on placement of map blocks. I already talked a little bit about map placement, but I think the next one would actually focus on map placement, and maybe more importantly, would also focus on battle group, because this block system also gives me the excuse I need to create maps for ships, like I did with this destroyer class vessel. I needed a I needed a ship. I needed a ship map. I have a ship map. That's fantastic and all, but like, gosh, I would really like to make that process easier, and probably have these geomorphs more on like considerations for where mechs could actually walk through and where a mech would be hangered. Kind of seems like an important detail. Making sure that half size mechs and normal people who are of course half size can move through the ship itself, and then of course making sure that the regular size mechs are either explicitly allowed in some areas, or they're going to be impaired if they just start smashing through the walls, which is also fine. If you want to like blow up a ship from the inside, you could do that. It's just going to be extremely dangerous, like when the Russian bias shot at somebody who was standing right here and missed and hit the fuel refinery instead, dealing probably a fair amount more damage than they were expecting. Certainly more than the one person was going to take. The SRTD 342, the SRTD-342, stunned grunt. Oh, I need quotes over that. I need quotes this is the TISM I was talking about earlier. I need to make sure that the players know. How else will the players know that this is a nickname? And not like, I don't know, and not the name that will pop up in a War Thunder thread years down the line. Unless I tell them almost explicitly, hey, by the way, this is a nickname, by indicating the consistency is key. Very important for this NPC that might die. Oh well. Besides that, I think I've got everything I wanted to do tonight. I know for a fact I got everything I wanted to do tonight. I'm gonna stay up longer, and I'm just going to do well. I'll probably place. No, I'm definitely gonna play some Deadlock. Come on, but I didn't do any NPC token, probably because it wasn't on my list. That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun. I say that would be fun for me. Whether it's fun for a stream is another question entirely. Need more people who ask me questions and yell things. Maybe I should just pay some people to start, I don't know, yelling slurs at me in the chat. Interactivity, very important. Oh well, I'm gonna go on another tangent, but I feel the stove haunting me. I'm gonna make some burgers. But that's all I have for tonight. Thank you to everyone who stopped by, including a bunch of people from the Lancer server. Bees. Yeah, no, I know it'll stop immediately. That's why I'm